Okay guys, back with some more content that you must know for your paper 2 coming up next week. Just a quick one before I continue. Please check out the link in my bio. Those of you who have been in touch with me and asked me to do videos, there's absolutely no way I can do all of those videos before next week. What I am doing though, on Sunday, this Sunday from 10 AM till 5 PM, I'm doing an all-day paper 2 core content overview. It's 10 till 5, it's covering the modules of globalization, superpowers, regenerating places, migration, identity and sovereignty. They will all be with me. And then there's HHRI as well. So if you are struggling with the revision for your paper 2, check out the link in that bio. It's $9.99 for all day. This is the kind of content that will make you dangerous in that geography exam and will make you be able to say things like,
I am the danger.
Breaking Bad, fantastic show. It is a must know, it's a non-negotiable. You've got to know this content. Of course, what I am talking about, the IGOs. Now obviously this is going to be no use to you in your regenerating places and your diverse places topics, but honestly, who likes them anyway? My idea, new specification, why don't we have dangerous places? Yeah? Give me a like, give me a comment, let's try and build this specification. Dangerous places. I think it's a winner. Anyway, back to the IGOs. I am of course talking about Bretton Woods, our UN organizations. They seem to come up in every single human module, whether it's globalization, whether it's superpowers, migration, identity and sovereignty, and HHRI. So it's kind of that, if you're looking for that really quick fix to your revision process over the next few days, maybe you've not prepared enough, then the IGOs are going to be your first port of call because they come up in every single topic and their utility in paper 2 is absolutely outstanding. Let's go through that now. Now the ones that are going to be the most useful to you, IMF and World Bank. So let's just have a quick recap on what they do. So the IMF, they will come in when there's some sort of economic crisis, so something like a debt crisis. And what they do, they offer the recipient nation a loan, a sum of money to try and help them out with their unsustainable debt. Now this isn't money for nothing. If you imagine you've got yourself into some debt, who are you going to approach? You're going to approach your parents. Now, your parents are going to say to you, right, I'll give you this money, but there's going to be certain conditions. That's exactly what the IMF do, only they call them structural adjustment programs or structural adjustment policies. Now in the exam, you can write this like this. SAPs, okay? Most examiners will know what you mean by SAPs, structural adjustment programs. Now normally there are two key ones that you need to mention. Usually are open borders to FDI and some kind of austerity. Now austerity means decreasing in government spend. Now that's sensible because obviously, usually why these nations have got themselves into debt in the first place is because they're spending too much maybe on the public sector. Everything's nationalised and the government can't keep up with the amount of money that they're having to spend on wages and whatever it takes to run the usually inefficient industries. So what the IMF will say is, well, why don't you reduce the burden? Open your borders to FDI, privatise those nationalised industries. And then austerity is obviously there, so they're not spending as much on other things, and so they can service the debt. So that's the IMF. Now the World Bank is slightly different. They will usually target developing nations who are looking to move up the development ladder. Now, one of the quickest ways to do this is to spend money on infrastructure and education. Usually it's infrastructure based. Now this can be a loan, sometimes it can be a grant, and they apply the exact same policies, structural adjustment policies. WTO, the main things that I like to associate the WTO with in the geography exam are the following: reduction of tariffs and reductions of subsidies. So just a quick recap, just in case you've forgotten what these are. Tariffs are a tax on trade. So for the pleasure of trading a certain good with another nation, you're going to have to pay something to that government. Now a tariff is often used as a protectionist measure. It's a measure to protect domestic industries. If you don't want cheaper import, threatening the sustainability of your domestic businesses, then the government will often employ tariffs, a tax on trade. It keeps it more of a level playing field. Foreign imports can't undercut domestic suppliers too much. Subsidies are very similar. So it's a grant given to certain areas of the economy, and it's to keep them afloat. Economic sectors like agriculture, and again, it's to protect from foreign imports. So to keep them competitive, they will just give them an amount of money which reduces their cost of production and allows them to remain competitive, therefore protecting the domestic market. So there's tariffs and subsidies. Altogether, what the WTO are trying to do with reducing tariffs and subsidies is they're trying to increase flows of goods. That assists with development. So that's our quick overview. Well, the main IGOs that you do that are mentioned in all the elements of the specification. What are our case studies? This is my favourite for IMF. Now, Ghana got themselves into a bit of trouble, overinflated public sector, borrowed from high interest lenders to try and cover that. Price of their commodities dropped in value, and it led to unsustainable debt. IMF provided them with a $918 million loan, and then they benefited from increased FDI. World Bank, best case study for me is Philippines in 2014, and it was a $470 million loan, and they benefited from, in rural areas anyway, 5% increase in household income. So both of them have positive. We're just looking at it from the effectiveness side of things. There's also evaluations that we can have towards this, because they're not perfect organisations. So the main evaluations run along the same line of theory, and they're often to do with the structural adjustment programs. So these things here, particularly to do with austerity. A lot of the time, the austerity measures will involve decreased spend on education and healthcare. So for the IMF, a very popular case study for this is Jamaica, and their structural adjustment program led to a decrease in qualified teachers and nurses. They're not perfect, are they? With the World Bank, some of your evaluations are around this idea of privatization. So in Tanzania, part of the structural adjustment program was to privatize. Now, the industry that they decided to privatize was water. Now, the problem with that is, when it's something as essential as water and you're privatizing it, when you privatize, there's that profit incentive. And so what happened was there was a company, City Water UK, who took over the running of the water industry, and there were complications, shall we say. And City Water UK actually ended up switching off water supplies to those who couldn't pay their bills. So privatization has social impacts as well. So I think what we say with these organizations is that economically, in the short term, they provide some benefits to the recipient nations. However, over the longer term, the structural adjustment programs do prove problematic. That's probably one of the best evaluations you can go for with these two Bretton Woods organizations. With the WTO, some of the issues are when we reduce tariffs and subsidies, that will inevitably benefit TNCs a heck of a lot more. Now they don't have to pay as much in terms of tariffs, and there won't be as much competition from subsidies in these nations. So what they will start to do is they will start to outcompete what are called those sunrise industries. Small businesses that, given enough time, could grow to be just as competitive as the TNCs. But in terms of these, you're really going to struggle to outcompete TNCs, who have enormous budgets, but as well as that, they have the most knowledge, they're the most experienced, and they can operate at economies of scale. Very difficult to compete with. So what it will do is it will tend an economy towards monopolization, increasing reliance on foreign business. So that's our quick overview of the IGOs. Now what I'm going to do is tell you how to apply them to the different parts of the specification. Okay, now when we're linking it to globalization, World Bank, the easiest way to go is that it is an organization that accelerates globalization. And the easiest thing to do, because of those investments into infrastructure, is to link it to the increased flows of goods. With the example of the Philippines, for example, with more efficient rural infrastructure, it will inevitably lead to an increased flow of goods because there might be increased exportation. With the IMF, we can talk about it accelerating globalization. But this time, because it encourages FDI, we can probably link it to an increased flow of capital. WTO, same thing. Because we're removing those barriers to trade, probably going to go down the route of increasing flows of goods. So that's how we link it to the globalization topic. But what about superpowers? These two, you can talk about the same thing. Now, these are organizations that are incredibly Western-centric. Crucial statistic that you need to know for the World Bank and the IMF. Remember, your ability, or a nation's ability, to vote within these organizations is all based on how much money you put into these organizations. It's like buying voting shares. The US has 16.5% of the voting share in both of these organizations. So what's the significance of that? The significance of that is that it gives the US veto powers. Within these organizations, you need an 85% majority any of these policies be passed. So that is crucial, giving the US veto power and significant say over where significant sums of money that could develop an economy and grow their power status, certainly their economic pillar of power, has that power to skew where that money goes. Another way that you can bring it in superpowers, obviously, both of these organizations, you will apply structural adjustment programs, and when you buy those structural adjustment programs, one of the conditions is open borders. Open your borders to FDI. In other words, promotion of the capitalist system. So if we're talking about that section of the specification where Western superpowers control over the global economic system, these organizations can be utilized as a way of making that point about spreading the capitalist economic system. WTO, again, facilitating the increased dominance of TNCs in the market. The biggest TNCs in the world, ones with the greatest revenues, are definitely from the US. It keeps the US TNCs at the top. And then again, this links to both migration and superpowers, and you can even bring in globalization as well to this. These organizations, in promoting capitalism, in promoting open borders, in promoting flows of goods, flows of capital, in allowing things to flow freely, are ultimately promoting westernization. Westernization Westernization, a core theme, again, across all of the human geography module. Westernization obviously leading to changes in language, diet, clothing, politics, national identity as well. So, only a quick video there. There's no application to exam questions, but that's because this is such core content that you could apply absolutely anywhere. So if you're struggling to know what to revise next in your human geography paper preparation, my recommendation would be start with these organizations. Make sure you know your case studies, make sure that you know the key facts and figures associated with these, make sure that you know the positives and negatives of these organizations, and make sure you know which questions they link to. That is questions on Westernization, acceleration of globalization, how the US can maintain its superpower status, loads, tons of application, and it can be on either the agree side or the disagree side on your 12 and 20 markers. Okay, thanks very much for tuning in. Hopefully I'm going to get a few more of these videos in before the exam next Thursday. Right, I'll see you again.